Hello, my name is Shawn Kemp, and I used to play basketball for the Seattle Sonics. No, that's not true. So my art style is, I would call it, it's newer. It's a newer type of style, but it harkens back to some kind of original aspect. So it's what's known as laser cut art. So what I do is I take a laser and I cut layers of wood, and then I apply paint to them, and then I stack those together to create kind of a three-dimensional wall sculpture, if you will. But it kind of, the medium that it is kind of born from is paper cut art, if you're familiar with that. And then even further back, reliefs and those types of things. So kind of dimensionality to the artwork. You know, it's interesting. I've always been into kind of creativity and art. I have a degree in industrial design, which is about half engineering, half art, in terms of that degree. And so I've always kind of dabbled in and sketched and painted and just had that as part of my personal life as opposed to my professional life, even though the work I did in technology, a lot of it was user experience, user interface, branding, those types of activities. So it was kind of what I'll call corporate art, or, you know, I got paid to do it, but it was somebody else's, I mean, I was following somebody else's direction. And over the last 3 years, I've had kind of extra spare time, or I should say my job was super stressful. So I made extra time on the side to kind of have that creative relief. And so that's where this spent a lot of time on that. And I got really inspired by an artist out of the Bay Area named Gabriel Sharma, and another artist out of the UK called Martin Tomsky, who were kind of early kind of pioneers of this particular art form, and just really got fascinated by what they were doing and wanted to kind of explore that and tackle that medium. And so that's kind of where it got started. So it was about 3 to 4 years ago, I kind of really got serious about it. The one thing I needed to have was an actual laser to cut wood. Lasers are not, you can't just go down to the hardware store and buy a laser that will cut through wood. So that was kind of the thing that got me into it. So I bought a small laser and then a bigger laser and then a bigger laser. And then, like, you can see this one behind me is, you know, a monster sized laser. And that enabled me to get bigger and bigger as I was working up on pieces. Yeah, so it's an interesting process. So it starts with sketching. So, like, I'll be, you know, in my sketchbook, I'll be doodling on ideas and shapes and forms. And then from that, I'll end up with kind of some ideas on where I want to go with it. And then for a lot of the pieces, I'll take that idea and I'll start doodling with it in a vector drawing program. I use a program called Inkscape, which is a free open source vector drawing program, but Illustrator would be another one that's out there. And so I'll kind of start there. And then on a lot of them, I'll go into what I call generative or algorithmic design. So rather than just hand sketching it in a vector program, I'll actually take the idea and the concept, and then I'll create a computer program that will generate that particular thing. So some of the pieces, like the one that you can see, I'll grab a piece like this little small one here. This started off with the idea of circles, and then I sketched them and really liked how they worked. And then I created a program that did what's called circle packing. So it randomly generates circles of various sizes, and then it'll continuously try and fill the space with smaller and smaller circles. And so I can randomly create the layers using a computer program. And then I'll bring that back in, and then I'll kind of composite those layers by hand and kind of move them around a little bit until I like what's there. So it's a combination of kind of sketching it out, training the computer how to do it so they can do some of the more complex stuff, and then bringing it back in, making it look good. And then I take it from there and I take it to the laser and cut out the pieces of wood. So then I cut these out of sheets of wood. And then I take those sheets of wood and I stain them with I use an old school shellac, which is basically alcohol, like moonshine, and shellac, which is made from the wings of insects. So it's an all natural kind of stain, basically, if you will. Varathane or urethane is a newer version of that, but these are kind of more traditional, non-toxic. And I tint that with either an alcohol-based ink or a dye. And so then I'll add that to it, kind of create the colors I want. And then each layer will get colored with that shellac. And then I put those into a frame that I've made, and that then becomes a piece. It's all dimensional and multi-layered. You know, it's interesting because the whole process can be, there's pieces I've been working on now for a year, designing them, like pushing them around, trying to create an algorithm that designs it, and then not liking it, and redoing that, and then reworking on it, and I'm still not happy. And so that's the longest, most time-consuming part of the process. Just like any art, it's like that creative drawing, sketching types of things. Most of my pieces go from kind of concept to when I'm ready to start cutting them, or I'll experiment these smaller pieces, usually within a week to 2 weeks ish. And that's not full time, like that's, kind of part time. I'll work on it a little bit, put it down. So maybe 10, 20, 30 hours of time on the design part. And then the actual cutting and making. So most of my pieces are limited editions. So once I have them done, I can reproduce them kind of like printmaking. Like once you have the mold done, you can make the prints fairly rapidly. And so it takes about 2 to 3 hours per piece to cut them. Like if it's a 12 or 14 layer piece, it'll be about 3 hours to cut. It depends on the complexity. Like these little guys take forever because there's thousands of little circles it has to cut out. And so that takes about 3 hours to cut out. And then the staining, putting them together, frame and everything is probably another 2 hours. So it's about 5 hours of hands-on work to create each edition for each of the pieces. But the pre-work could be, it's like any other thing. You can have paintings you've been working on for years. Yeah, so it actually really, so the first place I really saw it was, I'm addicted to Kickstarter. I don't know if you're familiar with Kickstarter and that. So whatever it is, like I see stuff there and I'm just like, oh my God, I gotta get this. And there was a guy named Gabriel Sharma who was doing a Kickstarter project to buy his laser. So he was kind of pre-selling the pieces to buy the laser. And I was just fascinated by that process, using technology to kind of reinvent an old art form, or be able to do it in even more intricate and detailed ways. And so that's what really inspired me to dive into it, start researching it. I had in school years ago, like a long time ago, I'd started working a lot with computer controlled milling machines. So the ability to actually take a bit and mill out wood or metal. But it never came close to the vision that I wanted to be able to do with that type of stuff. But this actually was the first time I saw it. I was like, oh my God, that's what, like I can design it and then I can really efficiently take it and have it cut out. And I was just like, oh my God, that's what I want to try and do. Oh, I love them all. I can't pick my favorite. No, that's not true. I have some favorites. My favorite, I think, is still what I call Hive Mind. It's actually it's the yellow one. I don't know if you can see it's like a circular and it's got these spikes that stick into it. That one has a lot of kind of symbolic meaning to me. So I really like what it says to me on that particular piece. But I also really like just we have another one that there's a smaller version. It's purple behind me. It's got these swirls that kind of come in, and I call it chromatic vortex. And it's really neat because every time I throw a different color on it, it's just completely different and has a different feeling to it. So I really like that one as well. But I've got some other ones I'm working on that I'm like more in love with that I haven't yet cut out. So
works.
I play with a lot of different types of colors for the stuff, and I still do. Like I've been playing with epoxies and different things as well. But I like shellac for a couple of reasons. One, it's super non-toxic, which is really important to me, especially if I'm going to be sitting around and breathing it while I'm painting it. One, I hate wearing a respirator, so the idea of like having to wear a respirator and deal with toxic paints is really uncomfortable and annoying. Not what I really want to spend my time doing, but it is really environmentally friendly. So shellac is the same stuff that they coat candy with. that's how non-toxic it is. Like I could drink, I mean, I'm not going to, but I could drink the shellac and be just fine. So I like that aspect of it a lot. But what I also like is the way it actually finishes against the piece. So the newer types of stains are a lot more finicky. It's hard to get a really nice finish that's not too glossy or too matte, and it'll react with the wood differently. Shellac just goes on beautiful. It's a little harder, like it's harder to learn, but once you learn it, it just goes on in this great way. And then it ages. So as it sits there on the piece, it'll change over time as light hits it. And so it creates kind of an interesting deepening, darkening effect over time. So it doesn't just stay there forever as it is, it continuously changes, which I really like as well. I've got a couple. So actually somebody's coming over later this week. We're talking about doing some octopus kind of collaboration pieces because he's got some really cool squid and cephalopod. So we're starting to do some stuff. There's another laser artist in town, a guy named Gabe Menino. He's got something called Wonders of Woodland. We've done a couple pieces together. I don't have them here, but we were exploring the whole non-fungible token space, and we did a whole series of NFTs that were based on real life artifacts. So we collaborated on a bunch of those pieces. And then there's a couple other people that I've been kind of dabbling in some collaborations, but we haven't finished those yet. They're still in the conceptual side of things. So I don't want to spoil the surprise on those ones. None. I still have tons of anxiety. You know, it's interesting that I got on this particular one. I got into it just for myself. Like it was definitely the first time I did any art where I didn't really care what other people thought. Like whenever I'd paint or sketch, it was always for school or for work or for something where there was always somebody else's opinion that mattered in what I was doing. And in this one, I just did it because I wanted to do it. And so this is the first kind of medium where I just do it for myself. Like I really have gotten over that. I don't care what other people think, which is totally different for me. Like I've always cared about what other people thought of pieces. And this, I'm just doing it kind of for myself. I'm picking the colors, and I think I'm doing some of my best work. Like because I don't, and I'm really being honest and authentic to what speaks to me. I feel like the pieces come out even better. Like I'm more proud of them, and the reception to them seems to be better. But I don't really. It's interesting because I don't really care like if people like them or not in this one. But I still am working on the anxiety of like finishing a piece. Like how do you get it where I feel like it's done? Like so many times I finish a piece. Like somebody encouraged me to start putting my stuff up on Etsy, and I did, and people started buying them, which means I have to ship it to them. And it's every time I put it in a box, I'm like, it's not perfect, it's not done. There's something more I have to do to it. So that's the thing I'm trying to work on right now is how do I let it go where it is, and then continually improve on the next piece that I'm working on. Yeah, I don't know what his plans are for the future. So it's kind of it houses the work that I do, and then it also serves as a place that can also kind of bring in other people that are working on laser cut art. So I mentioned this Gabe Menino who's in town. If you go to the Upspire Art website, you'd see some of his pieces on that place as well. And so as I've been getting more into laser cut art, I've realized that it's a really new and emerging medium. There's not a lot of people in it. It's hard to access. There's people dabbling in it, but they don't have laser cutters because they can't afford laser cutters or just various, or like space. I mean, it's amazing how much space it takes to do this stuff. And so as I've been doing that, I've been thinking a lot about how can I help others that are doing this? How can we all become better together? And be able to kind of have this be a medium that becomes more than one person or a couple of different people. And so that's something I've been thinking about for the Upspire art stuff that I've been doing is rather than just having my own art on my own website, could I create something that other people can also join in? Can I help create a community of other artists that are all exploring and pushing the edges and collaborating on sharing equipment and tips and techniques and growing that particular thing? So one of these days, it may be that the Upspire art stuff is a collaboration of a whole bunch of laser cut artists from around the world that are all sharing and working to elevate that particular art form. Or it might just end up being me. We'll see. I don't know. It's I'm making the transition, I guess, sort of from technology executive to more of the pure art side of things, and I'm still undecided on how deep I'll go on that side of the world. You know, the best place is probably on Etsy. I mean, there's if you search for Upspire art on Etsy, a bunch of my pieces are there. You can also find my stuff on upspireart.com or ShawnKemp.art. I have both places will lead eventually to my pieces that are there. And I'm trying to get better about putting some of the newer pieces up. So I know the couple pieces that are actually in your show are not even up on any of the sites yet. So I need to, actually you asked, what am I trying to get better at? One of the things is actually getting them up for people to find. I make them and then they sit on my wall and I'm like, why doesn't anybody know about them? Pieces right now are up at the Jansen Art Gallery in Linden, Washington. Jansen. So the swirly one and the hive mind one are both up.
Cool.
They're in their just through August, I believe. It's just their summer jury gallery. So this is my studio / garage that no longer has a car in it. So I've got over here, I'll do a little, I'll tour and show you. So behind me is kind of the laser cutting station where I've got the laser, and then there's big stacks of wood that go into the laser, and then that comes out. And then over here is where I stack up the pieces as they come out. So these are kind of pre-cut pieces that are ready to stain that go here. So from here into the laser, cut them, stack them up. So I kind of got them ready to go. So as I have time, I come out and cut pieces, and then I go. And then over here, we've got all of the frames. So I'll pre-make a bunch of frames because I have every frame I have to custom make to be able to fit the pieces. I've got all the frames stacked up, which I need to make some more frames because I'm almost out of frames. And then this is my painting area over here. So each of the pieces goes on the table, and then I've got all my shellacs and everything lined up there. And then there's drying racks above that hold all the pieces. So I paint a layer, it goes in the drying rack, paint a layer, goes, and then it just kind of stacks up. And then I take those down, and then it goes into the frames, and then they're done. That's and then over cool. Here, I've got all the different larger frames. So I mentioned I'm working on some newer pieces. So I've got larger frames that I'm working on with some larger pieces that'll go into those eventually.